The white pardon steps were washed only for people the crown had already decided to forgive. Kaia Thorn was not one of them. She stood barefoot on the lowest step, with a straw broom in both hands, while the entire mercy court watched from the moonlit square below. Above her the palace rose in pale stone and black banners. Below her nobles, soldiers, priests, and wolf-blooded citizens gathered to witness the rite that would make Alpha King Veyric Sol look merciful before the winter assemblies. The traitor's daughter would sweep the old chalk away. That was the ceremony. Not pardon. Humiliation dressed as grace. Lord Regent Veyric Sol stood beside the high seat robed in silver white, his long, narrow face, solemn enough to fool anyone who had never watched him smile at a ruined house. He held the ceremonial chalk bowl against his chest like a priest holding a relic. "Let the daughter of House Thorn cleanse the steps her father stained," Harrow announced. "Let the king's mercy be seen." The crowd murmured approval. Kaia did not look at them. She had learned young that hatred was easier to survive when she did not count the mouths shaping it. 12 years had passed since House Thorn was named. Betrayer of the Southern Pass since her father was dragged through this square in chains, since her mother died with the word liar still pressed against her tongue. 12 years and the kingdom still spat Thorn like a curse. Alpha King Veyric Sol sat above her on the white stone mercy chair. There was nothing gentle about him, despite the dead king's portraits hanging in every mercy hall. Veyric was black-haired, broad-shouldered, and still as a blade left in snow. His dark cloak fell over one arm of the chair. His wolf's presence filled the steps without a sound, making every lesser wolf in the square keep its eyes lowered. A king, built for command, not comfort. He had not spoken to Kaia since ordering the rite. That was almost worse. She could have endured cruelty. Cruelty had shape. Silence left too much room for old hope to die badly. Harrow dipped 2 fingers into the chalk bowl and scattered white powder across the top step. It drifted down like pale dust, catching in cracks, settling over old carvings of wolves, kneeling beneath a rising crown. By royal pardon, Harrow said the stain of treason may be swept from sight. Not cleared, not judged, swept. Kaia's hands tightened on the broom. A priest beside Harrow leaned close. "Begin." Kaia placed the broom on the first chalk mark. The chalk did not move. A few people laughed. She pushed harder. The broom bristles bent. The chalk remained fixed to the stone as if it had roots. Harrow's eyes narrowed. "Sweep, girl." Kaia pressed until the straw cracked. The chalk brightened. The laughter died. The pardon chalk did not erase guilt. It exposed what power had already forgiven itself for. A thin white line slid out from beneath the broom, not away from Kaia, but toward her bare foot. It curled around her toes with the delicacy of a living thing. Cold shot up her leg. Not winter cold. Judgment cold. The kind of cold that made lies stand still. Veyric leaned forward. Kaia felt his attention like a hand between her shoulders. The chalk line crossed the step curved behind her heel and drew a circle around both her feet. Someone whispered witchcraft. Harrow's grip tightened on the bowl. "Do not move." Kaia had no intention of moving. For the first time in 12 years, the hatred around her had gone quiet. The chalk circle split. Lines shot outward across the white pardon steps too fast for any hand to draw. They formed a map, a pass, a ridge, a wolf banner torn in half, 3 gates, a hidden path through black pine. Kaia knew that path. Every Thorn child had known it. The Southern Pass, her father's alleged betrayal. Only the chalk was not drawing Thorn soldiers opening the gate to enemies. It was drawing a royal banner already inside the pass before dawn. The crowd shifted uneasily. Harrow said, "Stop the rite." Then his voice sharpened. "Break the chalk line." 2 guards stepped toward Kaia. Veyric stood. The whole square bent under the weight of his rise. "Do not touch her," he said. The guards stopped at once. Harrow turned to him, alarm hidden beneath courtly grief. "My king traitor blood has corrupted the chalk." Veyric did not look away from the glowing lines. "Then we will see what it corrupted." Kaia looked down at the chalk. The lines crawled toward the king's chair. Not toward her, not toward House Thorn. Toward the Sol crest carved beneath Veyric's boots. Her heart began to hammer so hard she almost missed the next shape. A wolf with a broken crown, a man kneeling, a sword lowered. Not in surrender, but in oath. Then the chalk wrote one word across the step between Kaia and Veyric: pardoned. The square inhaled as one body. Kaia stared at the word. Her family had never been pardoned. They had been condemned, executed, stripped, starved out of land and name. The crown had offered no mercy to Thorn blood, until tonight, when Veyric used her as a public symbol of royal grace. Veyric descended one step. Harrow's voice sharpened. "My king, do not approach her." Veyric did not look at him. "Why not?" The chalk answered. Another line snapped out bright as bone under moonlight and struck the base of the regent's seat. The chalk bowl in Harrow's hands cracked. White powder spilled through his fingers. Kaia looked up at him. For 12 years she had been the traitor's daughter, but the pardoned chalk had not drawn her father's crime. It had drawn the crime someone else had been forgiven for. Kaia lifted the broken broom, then lowered it slowly. "No," she said. The word carried farther than it should have. Harrow's face hardened. "Sweep." Kaia stepped out of the chalk circle. The white lines followed her. "I will not sweep away a pardon that was never mine." The pardon chalk surged across the steps in a blinding rush. It climbed the carved Sol crest wrapped around the king's chair and stopped at Veyric's feet. Then, in letters large enough for the mercy court below to read it, wrote, "King Veyric Sol betrayed the southern pass first." No one in the mercy court moved. The white letters burned across the steps with the brightness of bone under moonlight. Nobles stared, as if the stone itself had insulted the throne. Soldiers looked from Kaia Thorn to the Sol crest, then up to Alpha King Veyric, waiting for rage, denial, command. Anything that would put the world back into its proper order. Veyric gave them nothing. He stood on the step above Kaia, dark cloak falling behind him, one hand resting on the carved arm of the mercy chair his father's name had sanctified. His face remained severe, but his wolf's shadow had gone still behind him, ears lifted toward the chalk, as if it heard something no human mouth had spoken. Harrow's soul recovered first. "Corruption," he said. The word cracked through the silence like a whip. He stepped down from the regent's seat-broken chalk bowl, clutched in both hands. White powder spilled through his fingers and dusted his silver sleeves. Traitor blood has awakened the old chalk falsely. The rite must be closed before the lie spreads. Kaia looked at the glowing map beneath her bare feet. A pass. A hidden path. A royal banner already inside the southern pass before dawn. Not Thorn. Sol. Harrow lifted one hand toward the guards. "Remove her from the steps." Veyric turned his head. Every guard froze before he spoke. "No one removes her from these steps." The command hit the square with quiet force. Kaia did not thank him. She did not trust protection that had arrived only after public stone accused the dead king. Harrow's face tightened. "My king, the late king's pardon records are sealed by crown law. No chalk, no bloodline, no traitor's daughter has authority to challenge what your father closed." "Then why is it drawing?" Veyric asked. Harrow's eyes flashed. "Because she made it draw." Kaia's grip shifted on the broken broom. Straw hung loose from the cracked binding. A ridiculous weapon. A servant's tool. The thing they had placed in her hands to make her humiliation look useful. She let it fall. The sound of the broom striking the step was small. The crowd heard it anyway. Kaia pointed to the chalk map. "Read it." A priest near Harrow recoiled. "She commands the court now." "No," Kaia said. "The steps are already speaking. I am asking whether this court is brave enough to look down." A murmur passed through the crowd. Veyric's gaze cut to her. Not soft, not trusting, but sharp and unsettled by the fact that she had not begged him to believe her. That mattered. Kaia had spent 12 years under the weight of a crime inherited like a brand. She had learned the shape of pity and hated it almost as much as accusation. Harrow moved toward the chalk line with his heel raised. Veyric's voice dropped. "Break the line if you dare." Harrow stopped. The square felt the danger in those 5 words. The regent slowly lowered his foot. The pardon chalk brightened. A new line raced from the word pardoned toward the carved wolves along the left side of the steps. It drew men in soul armor moving through the hidden black pine path. It drew a gate opened from the inside. It drew thorn riders arriving late, not leading enemies through but finding the pass already taken. Kaia's throat tightened. Her father had said that until the day they dragged him away. We arrived after the gates were opened. No one had listened. The chalk drew a second scene beside the first. King Veyric Sol, younger than his portraits, kneeling before an old moon priest with one hand pressed to a white pardon slab. Behind him, bodies lay half-buried beneath snow. The chalk did not draw their faces, only their hands. Too many hands. Then the line moved to Oren's mouth. A pale shape formed there. An oath. The chalk wrote beneath it, "Self-pardon entered before public treason charge." For the first time that night, chalk dust shook loose from Harrow Sol's hands. The court broke. Voices rose sharp and overlapping. Impossible. Blasphemy. The dead king was savior of the pass. House Thorn opened the gates. Silence, Harrow shouted. His voice cracked. That crack revealed more than panic. It revealed memory. Kaia saw it. So did Veyric. The Alpha King descended one more step until he stood close enough that the chalk glow painted white along his boots. His shadow crossed Kaia's shoulder, not covering her but joining the edge of the map. "What did my father pardon himself for?" he asked. The priest beside Harrow looked as if he might swallow his tongue. Harrow answered first. "An old war law. If a king declared an act necessary to save the crown, the act could be pardoned before the public was ever allowed to judge it." Kaia looked at the chalk image of the bodies under snow. "Necessary." Harrow's eyes cut toward her. "Do not put your tongue on royal law." Kaia stepped toward the next chalk line. Every white mark shifted with her not following like obedience, but aligning like a court record forced back into order. "That pardon was never ours," she said. The words left her mouth before she knew she would speak them. The chalk flared. Veyric looked at her then. Then whose crime did the crown wash white? Kaia met his gaze. For one breath, the square disappeared. There was only the king who had used her guilt without testing it, and the traitor's daughter who had been made to carry his father's mercy like a chain. "The steps are showing you," she said. The chalk answered. A final line shot across the high step toward the regent's seat. It climbed the stone leg, curled beneath Harrow's shadow, and drew a sealed parchment beneath a wolf sigil split by a narrow hand. Harrow backed away. Too late. White letters formed along the edge of the drawn parchment. "Transfer of treason mark approved." The chalk line slid higher. It drew a younger Harrow Sol standing behind King Veyric, one hand holding the sealed pardon order, the other pointing toward a thorn-marked banner. Kaia's blood turned cold. Veyric's face changed at last. Not belief. Not absolution. Horror beginning to understand where to look. The chalk did not stop. It drew Harrow's signature beneath the sealed order. Then the pardon chalk began writing the name of the house that had received the stolen crime. The mercy court recoiled from the steps, as if the white stone had become a living blade. Some nobles stepped backward. Some soldiers lowered their eyes. The priests nearest the high seat clutched their sleeves, trapped between the dead king's holiness and the chalk burning proof across the very place where mercy was supposed to look clean. Kaia did not move. Her bare feet remained on the glowing lines, cold seeping through her soles, while the chalk dragged its accusation closer to the truth her family had died, trying to speak. The white letters at the edge of the drawn parchment finished forming. House Thorn. The square erupted. A woman cried out. A soldier cursed. Someone shouted liar, but the word broke before it reached the steps, too weak against what everyone could see. The chalk did not say House Thorn betrayed the pass. It said House Thorn received the mark. Kaia's fingers closed around the broken broom handle until splinters pressed into her palm. Her father's face flashed through her memory, not as the kingdom had painted him, traitor, coward, gateseller, but as she had last seen him, blood on his mouth, knees bruised from the execution stair, still trying to tell the crowd. There had been a sealed order before the public charge. No one had listened then. Now, the stones were listening for him. Veyric Sol lifted both hands. This is enough. Veyric turned slowly. No one leaves this square. The command rolled through the mercy court like a wolf growl under ice. Gates at the lower arch slammed shut. Soldiers straightened. Nobles who had begun drifting toward the side passages froze in place. Harrow's face hardened. You would imprison your own mercy court over a chalk distortion. I would keep every witness where the lie was shown. Kaia looked at him then. Not with gratitude, with measurement. He was still the king who had ordered her humiliation, still the son of the man the chalk accused, still the ruler whose mercy rite had tried to use her family's shame as decoration. But he had stopped the court from fleeing. That was not trust. It was a beginning the truth could use. Harrow descended one step, chalk dust ghosting from his sleeves. My king, a transferred mark means nothing without the sealed public charge. Pardon law requires 3 joined records: confession, royal pardon, and accusation. Without all 3, the chalk is only showing fragments awakened by thorn blood. Kaia heard the trap. Fragments could be dismissed. A dead law could be debated. A public charge could be hidden. She looked down at the chalk map at the parchment beneath the younger Harrow's hand. Then show the charge. The line beneath her foot flared. Harrow snapped. You do not command royal record. Kaia stepped toward the high seat. The chalk moved with her, not obedient, not chosen, but forced by the same old law Harrow had invoked. If the rite had opened false mercy, then false mercy had to account for what it covered. I am not commanding it, she said. I am standing where you told me to sweep. That silenced more of the court than Veyric's threat had. The chalk raced up the white pardon steps. It drew 3 documents side by side. The first showed King Veyric Sol pressing his blooded thumb onto a white slab beneath the words self-pardon. The second showed Veyric Sol sealing the transfer order, his narrow hand guiding the wolf sigil across a blank space where another house's guilt could be written. The third formed slowly, as if the stone resisted remembering it. Public charge. The words appeared first, then a thorn-marked banner, then Kaia's father kneeling in chains before the mercy square. Kaia could not breathe. The chalk drew his mouth open in protest. It drew guards, striking him silent. It drew Harrow standing beside the dead king's chair, speaking to the crowd in the posture of grief. Veyric's voice came low. What was the charge? Harrow's answer was immediate. Southern pass treason, gate betrayal, enemy passage, crown casualties. The chalk cut across his words. False sequence. The letters burned so bright the priests shielded their eyes. Another line wrote beneath the 3 documents. Self-pardon entered first. Transfer order sealed second. Public charge issued third. The crowd went quiet in a different way. Not shock. Understanding. Someone had to carry the crime the crown refused to keep. Kaia looked at the drawn image of her father. Her throat hurt, but when she spoke, her voice did not break. My father was not pardoned, she said. He was buried under someone else's mercy. Veyric's face tightened as if the words had found bone. Harrow rounded on her. Your father signed confession. Kaia's head lifted. Show it. A whisper moved through the court. Harrow's fingers twitched toward his robe. Veyric saw it. So did Kaia. The Alpha King stepped between Harrow and the nearest priest. No seal is closed tonight. Harrow's eyes flashed. You are breaking your father's sanctity. I am watching it break itself. The pardon chalk slid toward Harrow's feet. For the first time, the regent stepped back from white powder. Kaia followed the line with her eyes. It was not drawing the old pass now. It was drawing the mercy hall itself. The high seat. The regent's chair. The underside of the armrest, where Harrow's hand had rested every year during pardon rites. A hidden compartment appeared in chalk outline. Veyric's gaze moved to the real chair. Harrow said too sharply, "Do not touch that seat." The square heard him. The chalk brightened under the regent's panic. Kaia stepped toward the chair. "Why?" she asked. Harrow's control thinned into something colder. "Because traitor blood has already defiled enough." Kaia looked down at the chalk, now circling the base of the regent's seat. "No," she said. "It is showing where the mercy was kept." Veyric reached the chair before Harrow could stop him. He placed one hand beneath the carved wolf armrest and pressed. A narrow stone panel clicked open. Inside lay a folded white parchment, sealed with old royal wax. The pardon chalk surged up the chair and wrote across the steps sealed pardon order held by Harrow Sol. The old royal wax did not break when Veyric touched it. It pulsed. Once, like a heart that had been hidden too long under stone. The mercy court stared at the folded white parchment in the Alpha King's hand. The paper looked too clean for what it carried, too pale, too ceremonial, the kind of document made to survive fire witnesses and shame. Harrow Sol stood 3 steps away with chalk dust on his sleeves and murder in his stillness. "Put it back," Harrow said. Veyric looked at him. The court heard what the regent had not said. Not that the parchment was false. Not that it did not belong there. Only that it should not be opened. Kaia stepped closer, the broken broom hanging loose in one hand. The chalk at her feet dimmed, waiting. She understood that waiting now. The pardon chalk did not chase truth for her sake. It answered false mercy, when false mercy was performed before the bloodline forced to carry the lie. Tonight Harrow had made her sweep. So tonight, the steps had opened. Harrow recovered his regent's voice. The seal of a dead king may not be disturbed during a public rite. That order, whatever corruption the chalk pretends to see, is protected under royal silence. Kaia looked at the sealed parchment, then at the chalk dust spilled from Harrow's broken bowl across the step. "No," she said. "Royal silence is what brought us here." Before anyone could stop her, she lowered the broken broom and swept once. Not away from the chalk. Toward the regent's seat. A white cloud rose across the steps. The court gasped, expecting the chalk to scatter like dust. It did not. The powder landed in a bright arc between the sealed parchment in Veyric's hand and the public charge drawn at Kaia's feet. 2 pale lines formed instantly, one leading to the old order, one leading to the image of her father in chains. Kaia lifted her chin. "Compare them." Harrow's face sharpened. "You do not command royal law." "I am not commanding it," Kaia said. "I am refusing to clean it." Veyric's mouth tightened. Not approval, not forgiveness, but something in him shifted, as if he had finally understood that the broom had never been harmless. He held the parchment toward the chalk line. The wax seal split. A white flame licked across the fold without burning it. The parchment opened in his hand, and the pardon chalk copied its words onto the steps for every person below to read. "Royal self-pardon of Oren Sol. Necessary act declared before battle inquiry. Southern pass action forgiven under Crown Survival Clause. Public disclosure forbidden." The court broke into whispers. Harrow spoke over them. "Oren Sol saved this kingdom. A king must sometimes choose which truth can be survived." Kaia stared at the words. Public disclosure forbidden. Her father had died beneath that sentence. Veyric's voice lowered. "Read the next line." The chalk obeyed the opened document. Transfer of treason burden to House Thorn. For protection of crown stability. For preservation of royal morale. For prevention of border rebellion. Kaia heard someone in the crowd whisper her father's name. Not with hatred this time. With fear. Harrow stepped forward. House Thorn was not innocent. Thorn riders were found at the pass. The chalk flashed. Found after gate opening. Kaia took another step up. Her bare foot crossed the drawn public charge. The image of her father in chains brightened. "Show the confession," she said. Harrow's eyes went flat. "Enough." Veyric turned to the priests. "Bring the public charge record." None of them moved. Harrow smiled thinly. "It is sealed. No seal is closed tonight." The command shuddered through the square. A priest hurried toward the lower archive alcove, hands shaking so badly his keys struck one another like teeth. Harrow moved as if to intercept him. Veyric stepped into his path. No blade drawn. No roar. Just the Alpha King placing his body between the regent and the record. "Do not test me while my father's pardon is still wet on these stones," he said. For the first time, Harrow looked at him not as a nephew to steer, but as a king becoming inconvenient. The priest returned with a black-framed slate wrapped in white cloth. He set it on the steps and backed away. Kaia did not touch it. She pointed with the broken broom. "Open it beside the pardon." Veyric looked at her, then did as she said. The cloth fell away. The public charge record glowed dull gray old letters, carved into black slate. Confession of Thorn treason. Gate betrayal admitted. Enemy passage admitted. Crown casualties accepted. Signed Daven Thorn. Kaia's chest tightened around her father's name. The chalk line slid over the slate. For one breath, nothing happened. Then the carved letters began to peel upward. Not physically. Legally. The pardon chalk lifted them out of the slate and held them beside the white parchment's words. The two texts aligned. Necessary act declared. Gate betrayal admitted. Crown survival clause. Crown casualties accepted. Public disclosure forbidden. Enemy passage admitted. The court saw it at once. The confession had not been written from Daven Thorn's mouth. It had been copied from King Orin's self-pardon. Kaia's hand went numb around the broom. "My father did not confess," she said. The chalk answered confession derived from pardon order. Harrow's voice turned cold enough to cut. "A traitor's daughter will say anything when the steps flatter her blood." Kaia faced him. "The steps are not flattering me. They are stripping you." White powder surged toward Harrow's boots. He stepped back. Too late again. The pardon chalk drew one final mark beneath the public confession. A witness mark. Not Daven Thorn's. Not King Orin's. A narrow regent's hand. Beside it, another line appeared. Public charge authorized by Veyric Sol. Then the chalk paused. The whole square leaned into the silence. A final sentence began forming beneath Harrow's signature, each word brighter than the last. Original confession, witness still lives. The white line shot away from the steps down through the mercy court and stopped at the feet of the one man who had not spoken all night. The old moon priest beside the archive alcove dropped to his knees. The old moon priest's knees struck the stone hard enough for the sound to carry. No one helped him. Not at first. The mercy court had spent 12 years bowing whenever priests spoke over House Thorn's guilt. Now the one man who had held a sacred place beside the archive alcove shook beneath the weight of a chalk line, pointing straight at him. Kaia stared at him through the white glow. He was thin beneath his pale robes, his hair silvered, his hands folded too tightly over the prayer cord at his waist. She remembered that cord. She had seen it, swinging beside her father's face on the day of the public charge, while Daven Thorn knelt in chains and tried to speak through a mouth split by silence magic. The priest had stood there. He had watched. He had said nothing. Veyric Sol's voice snapped across the square. "Remove him." 2 temple guards reached for the old man. Veyric did not raise his voice. No one touches the witness. The guard stopped. Harrow turned on him. My king. That priest is frail, frightened and clearly compromised by traitor-born chalkwork. Kaia stepped down one glowing line toward the priest. Then let the chalk compromise him in front of everyone. A sharp murmur cut through the court. Harrow's face hardened. You have grown bold for a condemned bloodline. No, Kaia said. You have grown used to no one answering you from the steps. The pardon chalk brightened around her bare feet. Veyric's gaze flicked toward her, and for the first time there was something in it that almost looked like wonder. Not trust. Not tenderness. Something more dangerous to a king raised on clean legends. Respect he had not meant to give. Kaia did not look at him long enough to let it matter. She crouched on the step, picked up a handful of chalk dust from the line that had exposed the public charge, and flung it toward the moon priest. Gasps rose from the crowd. The dust did not strike his face. It circled him. A pale ring formed around his knees, then crawled up the stone in a thin spiral until it reached his trembling hands. Place your palm on it, Kaia said. The priest shook his head. Harrow seized the refusal at once. There. He rejects your unlawful test. The old priest whispered, I cannot. Kaia's chest tightened. Not, I will not. I cannot. The chalk reacted to the words. A small white mark appeared across the priest's lips, thin as thread and bright as moonbone. Veyric saw it. What binds his mouth? The priest closed his eyes. Harrow answered smoothly. Temple vow. Witnesses to royal pardons are sealed against later political misuse. A necessary protection. Kaia looked at the priest's shaking hands. Necessary. The word tasted like blood now. The chalk line on the priest's mouth split into 3 pieces. Beside him, the steps wrote, Witness silence entered after public charge. Kaia lifted her head. After, she said. The square heard it. The priest began to weep without sound. Veyric descended another step, his dark cloak brushing the glowing map of the southern pass. Father Lorn, he said. Voice low and dangerous, look at me. The priest opened his eyes. Veyric's face remained carved in command, but the mercy chair behind him looked suddenly too white, too cold, too full of old lies. Did my father's court seal your witness? After House Thorn was charged, Father Lorn's mouth opened. The white mark tightened. He choked. Kaia moved before anyone else did. She pressed the broken broom handle into the chalk ring around him, grounding the line to the white pardon steps. Do not answer the king, she said. Veyric's eyes cut to her. Harrow smiled as if she had finally made a mistake. Kaia kept her gaze on the priest. Answer the pardon. The chalk flared. The difference mattered. A king could be lied to. A court could be managed. A crowd could be trained to hate. But the pardon chalk was not asking whether Father Lorn was loyal, frightened, or guilty. It was asking what power had forgiven itself for. The white mark across the priest's mouth cracked. Father Lorn collapsed forward on both hands. Yes, he rasped. The sound was small. It broke 12 years. Kaia's fingers went numb around the broom handle. Harrow's face emptied, then returned too quickly to control. A single frightened yes proves nothing. Then let him finish, Veyric said. Father Lorn looked at Kaia, not the king. That wounded her in a place she had tried to cauterize years ago. He looked at her as if seeing the child who had stood at the edge of the square while her father was made into an example. But Kaia was not that child now. She was barefoot on the white pardon steps, with broken straw in one hand, and royal lies drawing themselves open around her. Speak to the chalk, she said. Father Lorn placed his palm flat on the glowing ring. White fire ran up his arm. He cried out but did not pull away. The confession was not given first, he said. The king's pardon existed before Davin Thorn was brought to the square. The pardon chalk wrote each word across the step. Harrow snapped. He is confused. Father Lorn shook his head. I was ordered to witness the public charge. Lord Harrow held the sealed pardon order. King Oren's self-pardon was already complete. The treason mark needed a house to carry it. The mercy court had become so silent that Kaia could hear chalk dust sliding down the cracks between stones. Veyric's voice came rougher now. Why House Thorn, Father Lorne's eyes filled. Because Daven Thorn had found the black pine path before dawn. Because he knew soul soldiers were already inside the pass. Because he would not swear the royal version. Kaia shut her eyes. Only for one breath. When she opened them, the world had not softened. Good. She did not want it soft. She wanted it clear. Harrow moved toward the priest with murder under his robe. Veyric stepped into his path again. This time his wolf shadow rose behind him, huge and black against the white steps. Another step, Veyric said, and Regency blood marks the chalk. Harrow stopped. The threat was not loud. It did not need to be. Kaia looked down at the drawn public charge. Show the signing. The chalk hesitated. Father Lorne moaned. No, Kaia's voice lowered. My father died under that signature. The old priest bowed his head. Then let it kill my silence too. He pressed both hands to the chalk. The steps flashed white. A scene drew itself across the stone. Daven Thorn kneeling before the slate wrist's bound head lifted in refusal. Harrow standing beside him, with one hand on the public charge record. Father Lorne holding the witness cord. King Oren's empty mercy chair behind them already marked with self-pardon chalk. Then the image moved. Harrow took Daven Thorn's hand. Not as a jailer forcing confession in rage, as an administrator completing a document. The chalk drew Harrow's fingers around Daven's. It drew the signature forming beneath another man's control. Daven Thorn. Kaia could not hear the crowd anymore. Father Lorne's voice broke over the square. Daven Thorn did not sign the confession. The chalk blazed so bright the mercy chair cracked from armrest to base. Father Lorne lifted his face toward Kaia. I held the witness cord, he said. While Harrow Sol guided your father's hand. The mercy chair cracked again. A thin white seam split through the carved wolf beneath Veyric's hand running from the armrest down into the soul crest. The sound was small, almost delicate, but every person in the square heard it, as if the dead king's portrait had torn down the middle. Kaia could not look away from the chalk-drawn image of her father. Daven Thorn knelt in white light, one hand forced around a stylus, his mouth open in refusal. The court had never been allowed to hear. Harrow's younger face bent above him, calm and precise, guiding the hand that would condemn an entire bloodline. Father Lorne knelt beside the image with both palms pressed to the glowing circle, sobbing without hiding it now. Harrow Sol did not deny the image. He chose law instead. The charge remains valid, he said. The words were so cold, so controlled, that the square seemed to flinch before understanding them. Veyric turned toward him slowly. You cannot have heard what he said, and still call it valid. I heard a frightened priest break an old seal under traitor-born pressure. Harrow straightened his silver-white robes as if dignity could cover chalk. A forced hand does not clear a house if the crown's necessity remains. King Oren's self-pardon was lawful. The transfer was lawful. The public charge was lawful because the kingdom survived. Kaia stepped down from the drawn confession. The chalk clung to her bare feet in pale dust. The kingdom survived, she said, by feeding my family to the story. Harrow's eyes cut toward her. Your family's disgrace prevented civil fracture. My family's disgrace buried your king's crime. Our King Harrow corrected. Kaia looked at Veyric. He felt the look. She saw it strike him, saw his jaw tighten because there was no clean place for him to stand. Not tonight. Not on steps where his father's mercy had become a weapon, and his own command had dragged Kaia here to sweep the evidence. Veyric descended until he stood on the cracked Sol crest. The pardon chalk brightened under his boots but did not attack him. That restraint mattered. It did not declare him innocent. It waited to see what he would do. Veyric removed one black glove, and held his bare hand over the chalk-drawn public charge. Then I revoke the charge against House Thorn. A stir moved through the court. Harrow's face sharpened with alarm. For one breath, Kaia felt the old dangerous pull of relief. A king's voice. Public correction. A chance to stop being spat at in markets and watched in temples. A chance to sleep under her own name without hearing traitor whispered through walls. Then she saw the word forming beneath Veyric's hand. Pardon. Kaia moved before the chalk finished writing. She struck the word with the broken broom. White dust burst outward. Veyric's hand froze. The square went silent again. Kaia looked up at him, breathing hard. No. His eyes darkened. Kaia, you cannot pardon someone who did no wrong. The sentence carried farther than the royal command had. The unfinished word on the step flickered. Harrow stared at her, as if she had just refused salvation. Maybe she had. But Kaia had been used as a symbol once tonight. She would not become another symbol now, not even a prettier one. Not the traitor's daughter, made clean by the Alpha King's mercy. Not the ruined woman restored, because a powerful man finally decided she deserved breath. That mercy was never mine, she said. Do not put a second white lie over the first. Veyric lowered his hand, slowly. His expression changed not into softness, but into something harder to face. Understanding with no escape. What do you require? He asked. Harrow laughed once. You ask her now. Veyric did not look away from Kaia. Yes. Kaia turned toward the chalk bowl broken near Harrow's feet. White powder still spilled between the regent's fingers, though he had nothing left to hold. She walked to it, bent, and scooped a handful of pardon chalk from the step. Harrow stepped back. Do not. Kaia looked at him. For 12 years, those 2 words had belonged to other people. Do not speak. Do not protest. Do not stand near the mercy line. Do not carry the Thorn name above a whisper. She scattered the chalk toward the regent's seat. The powder flew like pale sparks. It struck the carved stone beneath Harrow's chair and spread outward in a violent white fan. Lines erupted across the seat, not drawing the southern pass this time. Not the public charge, not the forced confession. They drew a ceremony. A private one. King Veyric Sol, standing before the same white pardon slab. Harrow beside him. Father Lorn bound by witness cord. A covered body at the foot of the slab wrapped in soul colors, but marked beneath the cloth by thorn steel. Veyric went still. What is that? He asked. The chalk wrote, beneath the image, first body hidden from public charge. Harrow's face drained. Kaia's hand tightened around the remaining chalk dust. Whose body? The white lines crawled over the covered figure and lifted the cloth in a shape made only of light. A young Sol prince's crest appeared beneath the dead man's throat. The court recoiled. Veyric's wolf shadow rose behind him, black and soundless. Harrow whispered, Do not draw him. But the pardon chalk had already begun writing the dead man's name. The crest appeared before the court understood what it meant. A small white wolf, with a split crown drawn beneath the throat of the covered body, glowed on the chalk-made cloth. It was not the crest of King Veyric Sol. It was older, narrower-edged, with 3 lines of war honor instead of royal command. Several elder nobles recognized it at once. One of them made a sound like air, leaving a punctured lung. Veyric did not move. His wolf shadow rose behind him, but it did not snarl. It watched the shape of the dead man, as if memory itself had turned into prey. Harrow Sol whispered again, Do not draw him. Too late. The chalk wrote across the white step, Prince Veyric Sol. A tremor passed through the mercy court. Kaia did not know the name well. Only fragments had survived in tavern mutters and old women's warnings. Prince Veyric, the dead king's elder brother, a war prince, a hero of the old border, said to have died in the Southern Pass massacre, said to have been murdered by House Thorn when the gates were opened, said, That word had buried half her life. Veyric's voice came low. My father's brother. Harrow shut his eyes for one blink too long. Kaia saw it. So did the chalk. White powder leapt from the broken bowl and drew a second scene beside the body. Not a battlefield. Not a chaotic pass. A private pardon chamber beneath the palace, its walls marked with old moon law and wolf-shaped sconces. Prince Oren lay at the foot of the slab before the public charge was ever spoken. His throat had been cut. A thorn dagger rested beside him. Kaia heard the crowd turn toward her in one old trained instinct. Thorn blil, Thorn guilt. She stepped forward before the accusation could grow teeth again. Show the hand that placed it. Harrow's head snapped toward her. No. Kaia scattered the chalk left in her palm across the drawn dagger. Show it! The chalk flared. The dagger lifted in white outline. A hand appeared. Not her father's. A royal signet gleamed on one finger. The crowd recoiled. The drawn hand placed the thorn dagger beside Prince Oren's body, carefully, almost tenderly, the way an official arranged evidence for a ceremony. Then the chalk climbed the wrist. A sleeve formed. Silver-white. Harrow's regent colors. The square erupted. Lies Harrow barked. A dead law distortion. Veyric's hand closed into a fist. Let it finish. The command landed with such force that even the torches bent. Harrow turned on him. You are letting traitor blood redraw royal mourning. Veyric's eyes did not leave the chalk. No. I am letting royal mourning answer why it needed a thorn blade. Kaia looked at him then, only for a breath, still not trust. But the old center of the world had shifted. Veyric was no longer standing above the proof. He was standing inside it where it could wound him too. The chalk drew King Oren next. Younger, crownless, blood on one sleeve. He stood beside Harrow in the private chamber, staring down at Prince Oren's body. The dead prince's hand was open, and in that hand the chalk drew a torn strip of black pine map, the southern pass, a second hidden path. Kaia's stomach tightened. The chalk wrote beneath the prince's hand, Oren, soul discovered. The king's passage before dawn. The word struck Veyric like a blow. His father had not merely betrayed the pass. He had been caught. Harrow's face hardened into a mask of survival. Oren would have divided the crown. Oren did what kings do. He chose stability. Kaia turned toward him slowly. Then House Thorn did not divide the kingdom, she said. Your king did. Harrow's eyes blazed. Your house was already dangerous. Border blood. Old loyalties. Thorn riders obeyed land before crown. My father obeyed truth before crown. And truth would have burned every village between the pass and the capital. The answer came too fast. Not denial. Justification. The pardon chalk brightened violently. It loved that less than lies. A new line formed beneath Harrow's feet. False mercy defense entered. Harrow stepped back, but the chalk followed him for the first time. Not because it chose Kaia. Because Harrow had just excused what power had forgiven itself for. Veyric descended another step until he stood beside Kaia before the drawn body of Prince Oren. The nearness unsettled her. He smelled of storm-wet fur iron and the cold stone of the throne. Dangerous. Guilty. Awake. Why transfer the treason to House Thorn, he asked. Harrow's jaw tightened. The chalk answered with images. A crowd in the Mercy Square. A dead prince named as Thorn's victim. A southern pass betrayal pinned to Thorn riders. King Oren standing above the public charge, with grief performed like armor. Harrow beside him younger, and smiling only with his eyes. Then the white lines moved to Kaia's father. Davin Thorn was dragged forward. Not because he had confessed, because he had known the truth. The chalk wrote Davin Thorn witnessed Oren's warning. Kaia's breath stopped. Her father had not simply arrived after the gates opened. He had tried to carry Prince Oren's warning to the court. The pardon chalk drew him at the palace gate. bloodied, holding the black pine map strip in one hand, shouting toward the soldiers, barring the way. Then Harrow appeared. The younger regent took the map from Daven Thorn, folded it, burned half, kept half. Kaia looked toward the regent's seat. The chalk followed her gaze. A thin white line ran under the chair beneath the hidden compartment. Veyric had already opened, and deeper still into the step below it. There was another hollow. Harrow saw where the line went. His composure shattered. He lunged toward Kaia. Not the parchment. Not the king Kaia. Veyric moved between them so fast his shadow struck the steps before his body did. Harrow stopped with a blade half drawn from his sleeve. The Mercy Court screamed. Veyric's voice lowered into something almost inhuman. Finish drawing Kaia. Kaia did not look at the blade. She set the broken broom against the lower stone beneath the regent's chair and pushed. The hidden hollow opened with a crack. Inside lay a charred strip of black pine map, and across the white pardon steps the chalk wrote, "The warning was kept." The charred map strip lay inside the hidden hollow, like a piece of night that had survived fire. No one reached for it. Even Harrow's blade remained half raised, useless now, silver edge trembling beneath Veyric's shadow. The Mercy Court stared past the weapon toward the small blackened scrap under the regent's chair, because sometimes a kingdom did not fall beneath a sword. Sometimes it fell beneath what had been kept. Kaia stepped around Veyric. He did not stop her. That restraint mattered. He was still close enough to cut Harrow down, still dangerous enough to make the guards hold their breath. But he did not place himself between Kaia and the proof. Not this time. She crouched beside the hollow and lifted the map strip with 2 fingers. It was brittle burned along one edge and marked in faded black pine ink. Her father had died because of this. Her mother had died insisting it existed. Kaia had grown up with nothing but the shape of their certainty and the world's contempt pressing against it. Now the proof fit in her hand. So small, so ruinous. Harrow found his voice. "A scrap of burned map proves nothing." Kaia looked up. "Then you should not have hidden it." The chalk flared. A murmur swept through the court. Veyric's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. His silence was no longer the silence from Parton's first step, the kind that left her alone beneath judgment. This was a silence that made room for the proof to breathe. Kaia set the map strip on the white pardon steps. The pardon chalk moved toward it slowly. Not in a rush now, reverently. White dust circled the charred edge, then filled the burned half with light. Lines grew from what remained, rebuilding the path that fire had tried to erase. Black Pine Trail, South Ravine, Hidden Wolf Gate, Lower Pass, Royal Passage. Then a second line appeared, cutting across the first. Oren's route. The route to stop the betrayal. The chalk drew Prince Oren riding under moonless pines, cloak torn, one hand pressed to a bleeding side. It drew him reaching Daven Thorn before dawn, thrusting the map strip into his hand. It drew Daven turning his horse toward the palace, not away from it. Kaia's throat burned. "Read it," she said. This time she did not speak to Veyric. She did not speak to Harrow. She spoke to the court that had shouted traitor at her blood for 12 years. The chalk wrote, "Oren Sol warned. Daven Thorn of Royal Passage. Daven Thorn carried warning to the Mercy Court. Harrow Sol received warning before public charge." The square seemed to empty of air. Harrow's eyes moved to the side gates. Veyric saw it. "No one opens a gate," the Alpha King said. The guards locked the lower exits. Harrow laughed, once brittle and ugly. "You think the court will survive this? You think border packs will kneel tomorrow if you let a Thorn girl tell them King Oren betrayed the pass, killed his brother, and forged a public charge?" Kaia stood. "My father tried to help the crown survive truth," she said. "You made him die for it." Harrow's face twisted. "Your father would have broken the kingdom." "No," Kaia said. "He would have broken your version of it," the chalk answered. False crown stability claim entered. Harrow flinched as if struck. The line raced toward the mercy chair, and drew a crown balanced on 3 white stones. The first stone bore Oren's self-pardon. The second bore Harrow's transfer order. The third bore Daven Thorn's forced confession. Then the chalk showed the crown standing. Stable. Clean. Beautiful. A kingdom built on 3 hidden lies. Veyric stared at the drawing. Kaia watched him from the corner of her eye. He could still choose the crown. Kings usually did. They called it burden duty, survival necessity. They turned someone else's body into a bridge and then praised themselves for crossing carefully. Harrow understood that too. He lowered his blade. Not in surrender, in strategy. "My king," he said, suddenly soft. "You were a child when this happened. Your father left you a kingdom held together by terrible choices. Do not let her tear apart what you inherited. You can clear her house quietly. Restore lands. Offer gold, offer protection. Let the public charge remain closed for the sake of peace." Kaia's fingers tightened around the broken broom. There it was again. Mercy as a cloth overwrought. Veyric looked at her. For one breath she saw what Harrow was offering him. A way to save the soul name, save the throne, save the dead king's portrait, save himself from standing in front of a kingdom and saying his crown had been polished with thorn blood. Then Veyric looked at the chalk crown balanced on lies. No. The word was quiet. Harrow went still. Veyric stepped onto the drawn crown. The white chalk did not crack beneath him. It climbed his boots, testing. "I will not keep peace by asking another thorn to carry what my house did." Kaia's chest tightened. She hated that the words touched her. She hated more that they mattered. Harrow's softness vanished. "Then you will lose the throne." Veyric looked at the crowd. If the throne cannot stand after truth, it was already falling. The pardon chalk surged. For the first time it climbed Veyric. White lines wrapped around his boots, up the hem of his cloak, and across his bare hand. His wolf shadow rose behind him, black and enormous, but the chalk marked it too, drawing pale fractures through the darkness. The crowd gasped. Kaia stepped forward. "What is it doing?" Father Lorne, still kneeling, whispered, testing the air of the self-pardoned king. Harrow smiled then. A terrible, relieved smile. "Yes," he said. "Let it test him." The chalk line reached Veyric's throat. There, beneath the collar of his black tunic, a pale mark appeared on his skin. Not a wound, not a mate mark, a royal pardon brand, the same shape as the white slab beneath King Oren's hand. Veyric's breath caught. Kaia saw the pain cross his face before he buried it. Harrow lifted his chin. "The son carries the father's pardon. Break Oren's mercy, and you break Veyric's blood claim with it." The pardon chalk wrote around Veyric's feet, "Heirship sealed by self-pardon blood." The white mark at Veyric's throat began to burn. He did not cry out. That made the pain more visible. The pardon chalk had wrapped him in pale lines from boot to collar, but it did not drag him down. It held him upright on the white pardon steps, forced into the same position Kaia had been forced into at the beginning of the rite displayed before the court, while power decided what his body meant. Harrow Sol watched with terrible satisfaction. "Now you understand," the regent said. "Your father's self-pardon was not merely a document. It preserved succession. It kept the royal bloodline clean enough for the wolves to follow. If that pardon falls, the heirship sealed through it falls with you." A whisper moved through the mercy court. Veyric's wolf shadow shuddered behind him. Pale cracks ran through its dark shape, but it did not bow. Kaia stared at the brand on his throat. Oren Sol's crime had been forgiven before judgment. House Thorn had carried the treason mark. Veyric had inherited a throne made clean by that false mercy. And now Harrow wanted the court to believe truth itself would destroy the kingdom, unless ye clean not its tay-self. Needin Harrow wanted the court to believe truth itself. Harrow turned to Kaia. "There is your justice, Thorn girl. Break the dead king's pardon, and your noble alpha loses the throne. Spare him and admit the old mercy must stand. Kaia's fingers tightened around the broken broom. Veyric looked at her through the chalk glow. "Do not spare me for the crown." The words were rough. Not romantic. Not pleading. That was why they reached her. Kaia stepped toward him. "I am not here to spare you." A flicker crossed his face. Pain, perhaps, or relief. She turned to the court. "And I am not here to keep wearing his father's crime so the Sol bloodline can stay comfortable." The pardon chalk brightened beneath her feet. Harrow's smile faded. Kaia lifted the broom handle and pointed at the white mark on Veyric's throat. "Show what belongs to Oren. Show what belongs to Veyric. Do not transfer one crime into another body again." The steps went still. Even the wind above the Mercy Square seemed to hold its breath. Harrow's voice sharpened. "She cannot command inheritance law." Kaia did not look at him. "No, I am challenging the transfer." The word struck the chalk like flint. Transfer. The false mechanism that had ruined her house. The pardon chalk surged from Veyric's throat, down to the Sol crest. It drew 2 lines, one from the self-pardon slab to King Oren's name, and another from the throne to Veyric's. For a moment, both lines twisted together like roots. Then the chalk began to separate them. Veyric staggered. Kaia stepped forward, but stopped before touching him. The court was watching. Harrow was waiting. If she reached too quickly, he would call it seduction witchcraft, traitor blood bending a king. So she gave Veyric command instead. "Stand." His eyes lifted to hers. The word was not tender. It was trust shaped like an order. Veyric stood. The chalk cut deeper into the white brand. A line of light slid from his throat, and down the steps away from his body toward the image of King Oren kneeling over the pardon slab. Harrow lunged forward. "Stop!" This Veyric's wolf shadow snapped its head toward him. No one interrupts the chalk. The command shook the banners. The white mark at Veyric's throat split open. Inside it was not blood. It was writing. Kaia saw the old royal claws burned beneath his skin carried since childhood. Air cleansed by prior pardon. Crown claim secured from father's necessity. Royal sin shall not stain royal succession. The court stared in horror. Veyric read it too. His face went cold. "Who placed this on me?" The chalk answered by drawing a nursery chamber on the steps. Not soft, not gentle, not childlike, only ceremonial. A stone basin, a moon priest, a sleeping infant wrapped in black and white royal cloth. Harrow's Sol standing beside the basin, with one hand on the baby's throat pressing white chalk into skin, while King Oren watched from the doorway. Kaia's stomach turned. Harrow did not deny it. "The throne needed protection," he said. "Your father's enemies would have torn you apart for what he had done. So you made me carry his pardon in my flesh. I made you king." Veyric's wolf shadow snarled, then full and low. The court flinched. Kaia looked at the infant image fading across the step. The old anger in her shifted, not softening, but widening. Harrow had not only framed Thorn, he had bound Veyric to the lie before Veyric was old enough to speak. Then he had raised him inside that sealed mercy, guiding him, feeding him reports, using the father's false pardon to keep the son obedient. But injury did not erase responsibility. Kaia turned to Veyric. "You still used me." His jaw tightened. "Yes. No defense. No uncle. No father. No ignorance. Yes," he said again, louder. "I ordered you onto these steps as a symbol of mercy before I knew whether mercy was owed. That is mine." The pardon chalk flared. Not against him, around him. The court heard the difference. Harrow did too. His eyes sharpened with alarm. Kaia pointed to the cracked word pardon still smeared near Veyric's hand from the earlier attempt to restore her. "Then do not pardon me." Veyric turned toward the crowd. "House Thorn is not pardoned tonight," he said. A violent murmur rose. He spoke over it. "Because pardon belongs to the guilty. House Thorn was accused by transfer, condemned by forged confession, and burdened by a crime my father had already forgiven himself for. The charge is not pardoned. It is void. The pardon chalk exploded white across the steps. Every drawn document lifted from the stone at once: self-pardon, transfer order, public charge, forced confession, hidden map, royal brand. They spun in a storm of legal light, then slammed down into a single line before the mercy court. False mercy sequence broken. For one heartbeat, Kaia thought the steps would finally release them. Then Harrow laughed. Softly. The sound was worse than rage. "You broke the sequence," he said. "Not the succession clause." The chalk went cold. A hidden line appeared beneath the soul crest, one that had not been visible before, because it had not belonged to Oren's pardon or Thorn's charge. It belonged to Harrow. If heirship separates from self-pardon blood, emergency regency activates. Veyric's eyes narrowed. Harrow lifted his bleeding hand, and from beneath his sleeve he drew a narrow white seal shaped like a wolf's tooth. "My brother built the lie," he said. "I built the replacement." He drove the tooth seal into the cracked soul crest. The pardon chalk blackened around it. Across the white pardon steps, one final order burned into view: regent Harrow Sol to inherit crown upon pardon failure. The white tooth seal drank the light from the soul crest. Blackness crawled through the chalk like ink dropped into milk. It swallowed the broken self-pardon, the forged confession, the hidden map, the image of King Oren kneeling before the slab. One by one, the drawn records dimmed beneath Harrow's emergency seal. The mercy court began to panic. Not loudly at first. A backward step. A whispered oath. A priest clutching his prayer cord too hard. Soldiers looking from Veyric to Harrow, weighing which command would still exist by dawn. Harrow Sol stood before the blackening crest, with his bleeding hand raised. "By emergency continuity," he said, voice ringing clean. "Now the crown passes into regent protection until royal blood is purified from unlawful challenge." Veyric's wolf shadow strained behind him. The pardon brand at his throat burned white again, but the black chalk at his feet locked around his boots. The seal did not need to kill him. It only needed to make him legally uncertain long enough for Harrow to seize the throne. Kaia saw the trap. If Veyric defended his crown through Oren's self-pardon house, Thorn stayed buried beneath false mercy. If he broke the self-pardon, Harrow's replacement clause awakened. Either way, a Sol man kept the crime and called it law. Kaia looked at the broken broom in her hand. They had given it to her so she could erase. She turned it around. Then she stepped onto the blackened chalk. Veyric's head snapped toward her. "Kaia, don't." It was the first time he sounded afraid for her without trying to command her. Harrow smiled. "Let her. Traitor blood cannot touch a succession seal without proving corruption." Kaia knelt. The square fell silent around the motion. She did not touch the tooth seal. She dragged the broken broom handle through the white chalk still clinging to her palm and drew a line around it. A circle. Not pardon. Witness. The old chalk under the blackness flickered. Kaia spoke to the steps, not to Harrow, not to Veyric, not to the crowd that had hated her because hatred had been easier than doubt. "The pardon chalk does not erase guilt," she said. "It exposes what power forgave itself for." The circle tightened around the tooth seal. Harrow's smile vanished. Kaia lifted her eyes to him. "So, if your seal woke it, Regent, what did you forgive yourself for?" The tooth seal cracked. A sound went through the square like stone remembering thunder. Black chalk peeled away from the soul crest in strips. Underneath, new white lines formed, not around King Oren, not around House Thorn, not around Veyric's throat, around Harrow's feet. Harrow stepped back. The circle followed. "No," he said. The pardon chalk ignored him. It drew a private chamber. Not the old pardon chamber beneath the palace. A smaller room behind the regent's archive, windowless with a table of white seals and a crown drawn in outline but not yet worn. Harrow stood alone over a document older than tonight but newer than Oren's crimes. His hand pressed the wolf-tooth seal into wax. The chalk wrote, "Prepared before mercy rite." The court recoiled. Kaia stood slowly. Veyric watched from the trapped crest pain cutting across his face, but he did not interrupt. He understood now. A king's command would only give Harrow another crown to hide behind. Kaia pointed the broom handle at the new drawing. "Read it." Father Lorne, still kneeling near the archive alcove, whispered the first words with a broken voice. "Emergency regency upon pardon failure." The chalk wrote the rest. "Witness condition public shame of Thorn blood. Ritual trigger pardon chalk awakened under traitor line contact. Narrative defense chalk corruption. Execution recommendation remove Thorn witness before dawn." Veyric's eyes went black with fury. Harrow's voice snapped. "Lies." The chalk flared. False mercy defense entered. Kaia took one step toward him. "You planned for the truth to appear." Harrow's breathing changed. "Just once. But it was enough. You knew the chalk might wake." Kaia said. "That is why you made me sweep it. If it stayed silent, I remained your traitor's daughter. If it spoke, you would call me corruption and take his throne." Harrow looked at Veyric. "I protected the crown from weakness." "No," Veyric said, his voice rough against the brand at his throat. "You protected yourself from a king who might one day ask why mercy needed so many locks." The chalk brightened around those words. Not absolution. Alignment. Kaia saw the difference now. The pardon chalk did not choose kings. It did not heal bloodlines. It did not make Veyric innocent because he finally said the right thing. It recorded what power did when the lie was visible. Veyric reached toward the brand at his throat. Kaia stopped him with one word. "Wait." He froze. She walked to the Sol crest where he stood trapped. The black chalk still held his boots. White lines cut across his throat, bright with the false mercy placed on him as an infant. He looked dangerous, even bound. More dangerous, perhaps, because for the first time he could not command the wound into silence. Kaia stood close enough to see the pulse beneath the royal mark. "You do not break this to save your throne," she said. "No. You do not break it to pardon me. No. You break it because no child, no house, no widow, no border blood should ever carry a crime, so power can stay clean." Veyric's eyes held hers. "Yes." The word was quiet. The chalk accepted it. Kaia turned to the mercy court. "Then hear it before he bleeds." Harrow lunged. Veyric's wolf shadow moved first. Though bound, wounded, and cracked with white lines, it struck across the steps like night-given claws. It did not tear Harrow apart. It pinned his shadow to the regent's seat, holding him in the exact place where the first sealed order had been hidden. Veyric's voice rolled over the square. "No one silences her." Kaia picked up the chalk bowl's largest broken shard and placed it against Veyric's throat. The court gasped. She did not cut him. She scraped. White dust came away from the brand in thin curls, falling onto the Sol crest. Veyric's face tightened with pain, but he did not move. As the chalk dust fell, it wrote the old clause aloud across the step. "Royal sin shall not stain royal succession." Kaia looked at it. Then she struck the sentence with the broom handle. No. The word shattered the line. The brand split open with white fire. Veyric dropped to one knee, one hand braced against the cracked crest. His wolf shadow roared without sound, and the pale fractures tore out of it in blazing strips, each one becoming a record on the steps. Infant air marked. Oren's crime. Carried forward. Harrow Sol witness. Harrow Sol keeper. Harrow Sol beneficiary. The wolf-tooth seal screamed. The sound was not human. It was law losing its mouth. The emergency regency order split down the center. Harrow staggered as the campaign white robes around him darkened with chalk cracks. Every hidden line he had written to inherit the crown wrapped back around his wrists. The pardon chalk wrote beneath him, "Regent claim derived from false mercy." Invalid. The square did not cheer. The truth was too large for cheering. It stood among them like a second moon. Veyric rose slowly. The brand at his throat was gone, but a pale scar remained. He touched it once, then lowered his hand. His crown had not vanished. It looked heavier. Good, Kaia thought. Let it be heavy. Harrow struggled against the chalk binding his wrists. You will ruin Sol. Veyric looked at the dead king's portrait banners hanging over the mercy hall. No, he said. We are finished asking others to survive us. He turned to the guards. Take him below the steps, not to the royal cells, to the public witness chamber. Harrow's face twisted. You would try a regent before common eyes, Kaia answered before Veyric could. That is where mercy should have begun. The guards took Harrow. As he was dragged past Kaia, he hissed. They will still call you traitor. She looked at the white pardon steps, where House Thorn's charge lay cracked open beside King Oren's self-pardon Harrow's transfer order, the forced confession, the hidden map, the broken succession clause. No, she said. They will have to read first. Harrow was pulled away. Only then did Veyric face her fully. The Mercy Court watched them with the hunger of people desperate for a clean ending. Kaia would not give them one. Veyric removed the soul signet from his hand and laid it on the cracked public charge record. House Thorn is cleared. Kaia's mouth tightened. The chalk flickered. Veyric saw it and stopped himself. Not fast enough to erase the mistake, fast enough to learn from it. He lifted the signet again. No, he said, voice carrying to every stone. House Thorn is not cleared by me. The charge against House Thorn is void because it was false before I was born. The chalk burned bright. Kaia's chest ached. Veyric turned to her, and there was no throne in his expression now that could protect him from what he owed. I used you as proof of mercy, he said. I had no right. No, Kaia said. I ordered you to sweep a crime that was never yours. Yes, I cannot ask forgiveness on these steps. No, she said again. Something like pain crossed his face. Then he bowed his head. Not to the court, to her. What do you require first? That question, more than any apology, loosened something behind Kaia's ribs. She looked at the chalk bowl broken beside Harrow's empty seat. She looked at Father Lorne weeping openly now. She looked at the crowd that had once shouted Thorn as a curse, and now could not lift its eyes from the documents under their own feet. Read it all, she said. Oren's self-pardon. Harrow's transfer. My father's forced confession. The map. The body beneath the pardon. Every step. Veyric nodded once, and after Kaia picked up the broken broom, the straw was nearly gone. The handle was split. It had been made for humiliation, and had become something sharper than a blade. After she said, you remove every portrait that called a lie mercy. The pardon chalk warmed beneath her feet, not choosing her, not crowning her, only recognizing that false mercy had finally been refused. Veyric stepped aside. For the first time that night, he did not stand above her, before her or between her and the court. He stood beside the record and listened, while Kaia Thorn Traitor's daughter no longer read the crime the crown had washed white. Before dawn, the white pardon steps were no longer clean. They were true.